everybody, and welcome to another episode. In today's episode, I am going to explain what is a variable and what is the difference between var, let, and const. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so to get started in today's episode, please open the same websites that we have been working so far with, which is our index.html file. I have opened the code that we have been working with on Visual Studio Code. Also open MDN, and I want you to type on MDN the following. You just have to type in variables, okay? And then you're going to get pretty much the information of what a variable is, right? And how you can use it in JavaScript. You just need to make sure that you type this in here. Now, if you don't get that, because sometimes you will not get this page to be specific, you can go to references, go back to JavaScript, and then type in here variable. Okay? And then you're going to get to this page, and you just have to simply click on declaring variables in JavaScript, and this will take you to the page where we want to be. Also, on W3 Schools, you can open W3 Schools, go to the JavaScript section, and scroll down to where it says JS statements, because I am going to talk a little bit about statements today as well. Okay, everybody. So the first thing that you need to understand is what is a variable, right? So let's go back here to MDN, and we're going to read a little bit here. Click here where it says variables. You will read here, and it says that you use variables as a symbolic name for values in your application. Okay, now the names of variables are called identifiers, which are going to be conformed to certain rules, right? So explaining this in my own words, a variable is a container, right? It's a container that has a name, and you can store data or values into it, like strings, like numbers, booleans, all that we saw in our previous episode. If you haven't checked that out, make sure to check out what are the primitive data types in JavaScript. So you can store all that information in a variable. So think of a variable like a box where you can save information on it, and you have to name them, okay? That's what a variable is in simple words. Now, in order to use the variables, you have to declare them. Now, to declare a variable, you have to do it with a statement. So let's go to W3 Schools now, and you can go ahead and read a little bit here in what a statement is for JavaScript. Here they give some examples. See, you go ahead and you see let X, Y, and Z, or X, Y, and Z. So all these portions of codes are called statements. Now, going back to my code, I'm going to give you a couple of examples. We can declare variables. This is the first thing you need to know. We can declare variables, and I'm going to add a comment here. So we can declare a variable using the following keywords. You can use var, you can use let, or you can use const. And I'm going to get into what's the difference between each one of them in just a moment. But just for now, know that you can declare a variable using any of them. Okay, so now I'm going to hit enter, and now we are going to declare a variable. So how do you declare a variable using var? Very simple. You type in var, then you give it a space, and then you pick a name, right? Now, programming and coding with JavaScript, which we have something that is called camel casing, which means that you will sometimes capitalize certain letters in order to make your code look good, look a little bit better, right? So let's say that I want to set a name or declare a variable, and I want to call it I don't know, let's think my first variable. Okay, so I can do this. My first, you see that I capitalized the letter F, so that's what it's called, camel casing. So my first, and then I will say variable, and I'll put in capitals as well the V. So this is me declaring a variable and using and camel casing the letters. Okay, so I'm going to say My first variable is equal to, and then we give a value here. Let's say we want to add a string. Let's say that my first variable is going to be called, I don't know, let's say it's going to be called, my first variable will have the name of John. Let's say John. Okay. And then since it's a string, remember we use quotes, and then just make sure to use a semicolon to just close this. Okay. And now if I go ahead and I hit save, I am not doing anything with this variable right now. All I'm doing is declaring it. I just want my first name to have the value of John. Okay. So my first name equals to John. My first variable, I'm sorry, equals to John, not my first name. So if we go back to our code and I hit refresh, as you can see here, nothing happens. And I'm going to erase all this thing on top just so that you can so that you can go ahead and actually take a look and see how this will look like. Let me just copy one of these. Okay. And let's just delete everything. Let's save this and let's hit refresh. In our console now, it's empty, even though we have declared a variable, because declaring a variable doesn't necessarily do anything to your code. It just gives a value to something. Now, if we want to see that variable, then we will use console.log, right? And then in parentheses, we are going to see what is the value of my first variable. You can go ahead and you can type this here like this, my first variable. And by the way, it's case sensitive. Okay, in JavaScript, this is case sensitive. If I don't write the letters in capital as I declare them in my variable, then probably I'm going to get an error. Okay, so I am going to hit save again. Now let's refresh our website. Whoops. As you can see, I was missing the letter C on console, and that's why I got that error that in line number 7, I have the mistake, right? So I just correct that and let's hit save. Now let's hit refresh. And now you see the name of John just appeared in there. So that's exactly how a variable, how you can see the value of a variable with console.log. Now, you don't necessarily have to declare my first name only by using var. As I said, you can use also let, and you can also use const. So if I change var for let, and I hit save, and I hit refresh, okay, you see this name is still John because we just updated the keyword that we are using to declare that variable. So we can also use const here to declare a variable. So I can go ahead and I can put there const. Okay, so once I do that, then I can hit refresh and then John will be there, as you can see. Okay, so that is how you will declare variables. You can use var, let, or const to declare your variables. And this right here, this portion of code, const my first variable, this is what it's called a statement. Okay, I'm stating a variable that my first variable equals to John. And you can go ahead and you can use multiple things. I mean, not only that, I can say, let's say, let person 1 equal, and then I can go ahead and call person number 1, I don't know, let's say Maria. Okay. And then I can say let person 2 equal, and then I can call person number 2 Louis, and then I can save this and I can go back to my code and I can hit oh, sorry, I have to I have to use console.log here so that you can see this on the console. If not, you're not going to see anything, as we already discussed. So I can do console.log person 1. Okay, person 1, then hit save and then hit refresh, and then you will see that it's that Maria will show up here. Same thing if I console.log person 2, it'll give me the name, it should give me the name of Louis. Okay, so I am going to hit save. Now I'm going to hit refresh, and now the name of Louis shows in here. So you can play around making some variables declarations. You can make up your own variables. Just make sure that when you are using the variables that you read MDN a little bit, and what are the variable, how you can declare the variables, and what are the rules for declaring variables. Okay, because it's important for you to know here certain things. And you can only do that if you read the entire document. Probably I'm going to make this video not that long, not that short, but at least, just for you to get the fundamentals of it. But it's your job to study this document so that way you get more knowledge in how JavaScript works, okay, and variables and how to declare them. I'm just giving you the heads up that this is, easy and you can do it this way. Now, another thing that I want to talk about is what is the difference of var, let, and const, because we could really use all three of them. If I copy this and I paste them here and then I declare a variable of a person number 3, and instead of Louis I call her, I don't know, let's say Julie. Julie. Yeah, let's call her Julie. Let's hit save. Going back to our code, I'm going to hit refresh, and I forgot to add the console.log for the third person. Okay, person. So console.log person number 3. I'm going to hit save. Going back to our code, refresh. Okay, so now we see Maria, Louis, and Julie right there. Now I used let for all three of them, but you can definitely use something else like var, or you can also use const. This is just for you to see it, okay? Okay, so let's hit save, hit refresh, and nothing changes, obviously, in the console because we're just declaring variables and we're just calling the variables using console.log, right? So, I mean, this is the simple way I can explain you and how you can declare a variable. Go ahead and play around with it. I'll leave you that as some homework. Try to create multiple variables and try to play around with it, okay? Now, the next thing that you need to know is what is the difference by using var, let, or const, okay? Like, why would you use var? Why would you use let? Or why would you use const if all of them can let you declare a variable, right? So this is something that many developers and actually I'll say even myself, when we started, we always have that question, like why var, why let, why const, and why cannot we simply just use one of them for our entire code and that's it, right? Just let's not confuse ourselves using several keywords for it. Well, I'm going to explain this as easy as possible because I know you're a beginner, and since you're a beginner, I'll have to explain a little bit more, getting deeper into functions and stuff like that to make the difference between var, let, and const clear. But I'll try to do my best to explain it just right now so you can have a wide idea and what's the difference between one and the other. Okay, the first difference between the three of them is number 1, scope, and number 2, the mutability. Okay, now when I talk about mutability, I'm talking about the variable being able to be changed or updated. Okay, if a variable is mutable, then later on that variable can change or the value of it can be updated. If it's immutable, then it cannot be changed once they are created. They are simply set up for a certain value, and that value cannot change if they are not immutable. Okay, if they're mutable, they can change. So that's what I mean about mutability. And then about scope is just how they can be accessed in your document. So let's say, and I'm going to explain a couple of things here because I believe that you need to understand this. We have, in terms of scope, we have 2 types of scopes. We have the global scope, which is, let's give an example in the world. The world is a global scope, right? All the world is global. Now, local scope will be something like, let's say, your house, right? Your house is a local scope, or a country. A country could be a local scope. But let's talk about the house. Let's say that you live in a house. So within your house, you are local. If you go out of your house, then you will find other houses, right? So all of that is outside of your house will be like the global scope. And inside of your house, let's say that that'll be your local scope. Okay, so it's the same thing in the code. In your JavaScript document, everything that you see here when you start coding, this is all of this. This is the global scope. Now, we have blocks in JavaScript. Blocks are things that are wrapped into two curly brackets like this. Okay, so this is a block. So let's say that this is like a house, and what is outside of this curly brackets is what is the global scope. Okay, so anything that is inside of two curly brackets, that's a local scope, and anything outside of the curly brackets is the global scope. Now, I hope this makes sense. But if you have questions, and I'm sure you will, just leave them in the comment section below. Okay, so I hope that so far you're clear. Now, inside of a block, you can have other blocks. You can have other brackets, right? So if this is a local scope, then this is another local scope within that same scope. And this is, in JavaScript, we call this nested, okay? So when you hear the term nested, it means another block that is within an existing block already. Okay, so now you know what a block is. Now you know what a scope is, what a global scope is, and what a local scope is. Okay, so remember, anything within brackets. So this could be like your local place, and we could have several of them, because you will have several of them when you start coding. So let's say that we have here 3 houses. I'll just give you the example in the real world, like if these 3 blocks were 3 houses. So this is house 1, this is house 2, and then this is the 3rd house. Now, everything outside of those houses, including the houses itself, it's what I call global, and everything within the blocks is what I call local. Okay, now why am I explaining what is global, what is local, etc.? It's because I am about to explain the difference between var, let, and const. Okay, first let's talk about var and let. Okay, so that you can see that right now. So I'm going to erase all this that I typed in, and I'm going to paste a function example. This is a function example. Now, don't pay attention to if true, whatever, just pay attention to the curly brackets, because you know that this is a block, and inside there is another block, right? So if we use the var keyword to declare the number 1 here, then you see that the var, we have declare x, it's equal to 1 in this block, in the yellow block. Now, inside of that other block, you will see that there is another variable here declaring the same letter, the letter x, right? And now it has a different value, which is number 2. If we use console.log inside of this thing right here, the output will be 2, because we first declare a variable x as 1, and then the variable x was declared again by 2. So the output is 2 inside of this nested block. All right. Okay. So if you can see here, and if we go ahead and we go back to, because this curly bracket is closing here, right? So if we go outside of that bracket, right, then we see that we are using console.log, and then we're using x here, right? So the output for this one is 2 in here. Why? Because the variable x started in 1, and then at the end, then it was the variable of x started at 1, then the variable of x changed to 2 using var. And then outside of the curly brackets, since var, once it changes, then it changes for the rest of the function. Then when we use console.log and x here, the output will be 2. So let me just call the function example here. Okay. And I am going to save this, and I'm going to run it. Okay. So you see 2, 2. Okay. So this is what I'm talking about. First, they declare a variable x as 1. And then the variable x was declared to 2. So if we use console.log here, the output is 2, because obviously within this block, the variable changed to 2, right? Now, in this first block, in the first one with the yellow brackets, you see that the variable x equals to 1. But then when we use console.log, the output is 2. And that's because we changed the variable to number 2 afterwards. So when you use console.log, again, the output is 2, not 1. Even though the value was changed in this tiny box here, but it wasn't changed on the big one. So this is just to give you an example in how var works, right, within a function. Now, let's go ahead and use the same function here. And I'm just going to change this to example 2. Okay. I'm going to change this to example 2. And I am going to call that function example 2. Okay. So here we are going to use, instead of var, we are going to use let. Whoops. We're going to use let, and we're not going to say x. We're going to change this to y, just so you can see the difference. Okay, so I just changed that to y. Now here it redeclares y using let. Let equals to y, right? So the output here is 2 because by using let inside of this curly bracket, we let y equal to 1 using let, right? The keyword let. And then we redeclare the value of let to 2. Now, inside of this tiny bracket, the output will be 2. But outside of that bracket, the output of let is going to be 1. It's not the same like var, okay? Because in var, you declare a value, then you redeclare the value, and when you redeclare it, then that will change the value of that variable for the entire thing, right? For the entire function. However, if you use let, it'll change, it'll declare the first value, but then if you use another block, it'll change the value only for that block, but it'll keep the value for the first block itself. So I hope this is making sense. I know you are an absolute beginner and this could be hard for you, but this is just so you can have an idea in what's the main difference between var and let, because those two are the hardest one. Const is easier because, and I will explain that in a moment, but var and let are the ones that you will probably get confused with. So this is the best example I can do for you and the easiest one. Just remember, pay attention to the curly brackets, not so much of what it's inside of them, like this, if true or whatever. I mean, don't pay attention to that right now because we are not looking at functions, right? I'm going to explain functions later on. So let's go ahead and let's call, and this is how you call a function, by the way, example 2, which is the name of the function, and then parentheses. So I'm going to hit save. Going back to our code, let's hit refresh. Oops, and one thing I forgot to do here is in console.log, I don't want to console.log x, I want to console.log y. So that's why I got that error right there. So I'm going to hit save now, and now I'm going to hit refresh, and boom, there you go. So you see the first output that you see here, the number 2, is for this console.log right here, for this block right here. Okay, so console.log 2, because here we assign with let the value of 2. And then it returns 1 because to this one right here, to the first block, to the first curly bracket, we had assigned a value of 1. So that keeps the same value. So that's why it's better to use let rather than var, because var will change the value of your variable, and it'll be changed for the entire function if you redeclare the value later on, and that could cause a conflict when you're coding, because sometimes you don't want that value to be changed for the entire, for your whole function or for your whole block, right? So that's the main difference between var and let. So I hope that makes sense. Again, I know that you probably will have questions. Just leave them in the comment section and I will clarify them. I will do my best to clarify your questions, okay, as soon as I can. Okay, so now let's talk about const. So why would we now I understand, you might say, or kind of understand the difference between let and var, but why const? What's different between const and the other two? Okay, so const is very simple. Let me go ahead and I'm going to type in here. I will just write some code to explain you how this works. So if you go ahead and you use let person 4, or let's say let car equals, and then blue. Let's give a color to the car. Let car equals blue. If we go ahead and we add that in here, let car equal blue, and I do console.log, and then in parentheses I put here car. Save this, refresh, and then you see it's blue. Right now the car is blue. Now I can change the value of that car if I type in to change the value of that car, you have to type in here car equals, and then you go ahead and you can change the value. Right now it's not blue, now I want it to be red. So now console.log car again. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. Going back to my code, let's hit refresh. Okay, so first the car was blue, and then the car, we redeclare it using let, right? And we redeclare that to the color red, right? And you can see here the console is telling me blue. First is blue, now is red. Now the car is red, right? Okay, so you can redeclare variables using let, and you can also redeclare your variables using var. However, you cannot redeclare a variable with const. We can do this. We can say const let the bike be, and let's say that the bike is going to be yellow. Okay. If the bike is yellow, I'm going to save that, and let's go ahead and let's do console.log, and let's do bike. Okay. I'm going to hit save, and now I'm going to hit refresh. Forgot the W here. Okay, let's hit refresh, and then okay, there you go. So we know now by using console.log that the bike here is yellow, right? When we use console.log, the bike, well, the bike is yellow. It says here, right? That's the value of the bike. It's yellow. Now, if I want to change the value of that bike using const bike, let's change again the value of the bike. Now I don't want it to be yellow, I want it to be blue. Okay, if I go ahead and I type in blue, see what's gonna happen. Let's hit refresh, and you see it gives me an error. It says that on line 52 I have a mistake. Go ahead and check it out. So what's the mistake? Once you declare the value of a variable with const, you cannot change that value. So that's the biggest difference between const, let, and var. Okay, with the variable var, you can change the value of a variable, but once it's changed, it'll change during your entire function. Okay, it'll not respect the block section. With let, you can change the value of a variable, right? And it'll remain with the original value if you respect the block. So in one block it could mean something, and then in another block it could mean something else, right? Using let. And then the third one, which is const, with const you just simply declare a value, and then you can declare a variable, you can give it a value, but then you cannot change that value or whatsoever. It'll remain the same. So those are the main difference between var, let, and const. Now I hope I have answered your doubts and I have cleared them out. But I mean, if you still have questions, just leave them in the comment section below, okay? And I'll make sure to reply as soon as I can, because I know that this can be tough, especially if you are starting. So just leave your questions and I'll reply. Okay, everybody, so that was it for this episode. I hope that this tutorial has helped you out. If you like the video, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. If you are new to my channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And remember that you can always ask Lixi. Bye, everyone, and see you again in the next episode.